where my heart goes.
Alright, so in this video we're going to look at the dot point for HSC Core 2 Factors Affecting Performance, Principles of Training. So on the left side of your syllabus it goes through the 6 principles of training which we will cover in this video, being progressive overload, specificity, reversibility, variety, training thresholds, and warm up and cool down. On the right hand side of your syllabus it says that you need to be able to, with this information, be able to analyse how the principles of training can be applied to both aerobic and resistance training. So yeah, let's do it. Alright, so our first principle of training that we're going to look at is probably the most important one, being progressive overload, okay? And in a nutshell, it basically means that you need to go harder than last time.
Harder than freaking last time. Everybody knows it. Even the slithery little snaky snake in the background knows you have to freaking train harder than last time.
So training intensely actually causes damage to the body and the cells, which in turn, and in brackets I've put with adequate nutrition and rest and recovery, because if you don't eat properly, you're not resting enough, you don't actually make any adaptations. So your body will actually adapt so that next time you do whatever you did that first time that caused damage, you're stronger. So that doesn't cause you damage anymore, all right? That is the whole concept behind progressive overload. So progressive overload, so progressively overloading the body over time, ensures that over time training is always harder, forcing the body to continually adapt. Okay, this is how people get better, this is how people get faster, people get stronger, people can run further, okay? It's not just you go and do one training session and that's it, all of a sudden you can take on Usain Bolt, okay? But over time, if you continually train, and every time you train you're making it a little bit harder, and a little bit harder, and a little bit harder, then over many, many years you may actually get to like Usain Bolt type quality. The biggest way to visualize this is if there is no change in your training program, then there's going to be no change in your body, okay? So a common example, people will sign up for a gym, they'll sign up with a PT will write them up a program. Let's just say, I don't know, let's keep it simple. So one of the examples you need to do in your syllabus is like a resistance training program, okay? PT goes, okay, you want to, get bigger legs or, improve your glutes or whatever it is. So we're going to do a squat program. So PT says on the bit of paper, you're going to do 5 sets of 10 reps of squats at 50 kilos. Okay, so the person goes in, day 1, 5 sets, 10 reps, 50 kilos. Okay, they are super sore the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Okay, because it takes that long to recover from that type of exercise because they haven't done it in forever. So let's say they have the whole week off. Okay, they get back in on the next Monday. They do 5 sets, 10 reps, 50 kilos, exactly the same thing. They wake up the next day, they're super sore. But by Wednesday, they're not as sore as last time. Okay, so they're actually able to train again. So they go back to the gym on the Wednesday. They do 5 sets, 10 reps, 50 kilos. Sore on the Thursday, they wake up Friday, they're feeling okay, so they go back into the gym. 5 sets, 10 reps, 50 kilos. They keep doing the same thing for 12 weeks. 12 weeks is generally a good time for a training program. And then they look at themselves in the mirror and they go, wow, in that first couple of weeks, I really noticed a huge difference in my legs or the musculature attached to my body. But after like week 2, I didn't make any changes. So I feel like I've wasted my money and they're really upset. So then they just stop going to the gym because you know what? The gym doesn't work. I need to take some steroids instead. Well, it's not that the gym doesn't work, and it's not that you need to take steroids to actually continue to make change. What they didn't do is they didn't change their program. So if I draw up a nice little picture, and you can draw this in your book, hint, hint, progressive overload. So we'll call this time, and we'll call this intensity, so how hard you're working. And it doesn't matter whether it's applied to a strength training program or aerobic. So I've got some examples down there. So over time, let's say this is a year. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long the time is. You start here, okay? If you keep training at this intensity forever, this is how much you'll change. If you start a new training program, so you go from nothing, okay? Use a different color. You go from nothing. You start a training program, which is like here for you, okay? You make these great adaptations, but then because you don't change your program, like in my squat example then, nothing changes. And then you get upset. So you take steroids and whatever. What you should do, for the principle of progressive overload to apply, and this it always applies, is that gradually over time, and you don't need to do a big jump up, you should start your training program here. I need more colors. You're going to start here, okay? So something that's just a little bit harder than what you can do right now, okay? And this applies for any aspect of exercise. Next time you go in, you're just going to make that a little bit harder, and a little bit harder, and a little bit harder. And it may actually take you longer to get to like this adaptation, for example, of going in and doing your 5 sets of 10 reps at 50 kilos. Okay, so instead of doing it in your first session, you've taken like 8 or 9 sessions to get to this point, which may seem like a huge build-up, but then you're going to keep going and keep going. Harder than last time.
But if you're like the rest of us, 99% of the world, you train freaking harder than last time. How simple can it be? Harder than last time. What did you do last time? Do it a bit harder.
All right, that's progressive overload. That's how it works, and you need to apply it in all of your training programs. So how does it look in our training program? So if we're doing a resistance type training program, you just simply need to lift more. How do you lift more? There are many things you can change. You could increase the amount of reps. So let's say, my example before with the squats was 5 sets at 10 reps at 50 kilos, okay? So you could change your reps. So you could do 5 sets, 10 reps, 50 kilos here. The next time you go into the gym, here, you might do 5 sets, 11 reps, 50 kilos. That's progressive overload. You're not changing a whole bunch of stuff. You're just changing one little thing a little bit, and you are causing your body to adapt. And then the next time you might do 12 reps, and the next time you might do 13 reps. And then you might find that you start to stagnate on 13 reps, but then eventually you'll be able to do 14 reps, etc. So you're changing a variable. Okay, but you could also change the weight instead. So you could go 5 sets, 10 reps at 52.5 kilos. That's also progressive overloading, and then keep bumping the weight up while keeping the other things the same. Or you could change your sets, but that's a little bit more complicated and don't really need to go into it for the purpose of this video, but you just need to know that you could change your sets. If you're an aerobic type athlete, so let's just think of like an obvious one, a marathon runner, okay, because we're trying to use obvious examples in our HSC to explain to the market that we know what we're talking about. You simply just need to run more, all right? Which sounds a bit silly. So I'm an aerobic athlete. I'm trying to adapt my aerobic capacity. So the way I would do that is that I usually go for a 4K run, right? Which takes me 20 minutes roughly, because I'm already semi-fit. So next time I go for my run, I'm going to go for a 4.1K run. An extra 100 meters. That's nothing. That's from like here to the end of the oval. Like everyone can do an extra 100 meters. But then the next time I do it, I do a 4.2K run, 4.3K run, 4.4K run. And you can see that over time, my training is getting harder. So I'm applying progressive overload. Let's say that I have like a nice fixed circuit instead that's like around my house, and it takes me like, I don't know, it's a 30-minute loop, all right, around my suburb. And I like to do that run because it's neat, it's clean, the ground's flat, it's got a path, all that kind of stuff. But next time I do the run, what I'll actually do is I'll track my heart rate. So when I do my 30-minute run, my heart rate averages at, let's say it averages at like 72 beats per minute. No, sorry, that's wrong. Let's say next time I do my run, I track my heart rate and it averages at 72% of my maximum heart rate. So next time I do my run, I'll wear my little heart rate monitor watch, which, hint, hint, that's why they make them. The heart rate bands and the watches. This is what athletes are actually doing with those things, other than people in a gym just trying to look fancy. They'll wear that stuff and they'll constantly check it. So next time, I'm going to try and sit at about 73% of my maximum heart rate. And I might do that for 2 or 3 sessions, and then I might go for my run for 30 minutes again and try and sit at 74%. And because I'm actually pushing myself harder due to my heart rate increasing, this time will start coming down. So my 74% maximum heart rate run now actually only takes me 28 minutes. All right, so we're still applying progressive overload to our aerobic training program. So yes, I've spent a lot of time on this one because it is by far the most important one, because no training program in the world works continually over time without progressive overload. And I hope I explained that well. Yeah, cool. That's progressive overload. Harder than last time. All right, so our next one is specificity. And yes, I can say specificity. There are lots of people in my faculty that can't, and it's funny. So adaptations are optimally made for your sport by training those systems that you use in your sport. Now, this is such an obvious thing, but some people do, get sidetracked in all the other principles of training. So while training should be varied, and that is actually a point that I am going to talk about in this video for various reasons, athletes will still maximize their performance by mirroring the bulk of their training to what they're actually doing in their event. So for example, if you're a strength or a resistance type athlete, so let's take an Olympic lifter, all right? They should do a whole bunch of things to improve their strength, okay? So they should train in the gym, they should, train with bands and chains, and they should do like, isokinetic movements on hydraulic machines. They should do all of those things. They should probably even do some running and some swimming and some gymnastics moves. They should do a whole bunch of stuff that's going to improve their strength and conditioning. However, the majority of their training should be done with barbells, because when it comes time to do their actual event, that's what they're doing. Let's take aerobic type athletes. So let's, once again, obvious one, the marathon runner, okay? Marathon runner should do a whole bunch of stuff. They could do some circuit training, even though they probably won't get a lot out of it, but they could do some things like some swimming, all right? They could go and play some soccer on the weekend. They could go for some bike rides. They could go for some power walking. They could go on bushwalking and all that kind of stuff. But the bulk of their training, if they're trying to be the best marathon runner in the world, should be long distance running. Hopefully that all makes sense, like specificity. And you talk about, in the previous video, we've looked at energy systems, okay? And we've talked at like types of training and training methods. You've got to line up those training methods with the energy systems that the athletes are going to use in their sports. All right? It's well and good to be like a gold medal Olympic lifter, but that gold medal Olympic lifter should not be doing a training program where they're majoritively doing aerobic work, or they're majoritively focusing on their flexibility, okay? Because they're not actually going to improve their strength and power for their Olympic lifts. Yeah, that's specificity. All right, so our third one is looking at reversibility, all right? And the typical saying that goes along with it is use it or lose it. So training adaptations are not permanent, okay? And just on this, so I went to uni with a guy. I won't say his name in this video because I don't want to disrespect him at all. Massive dude, like massive. Like he was wider than he was tall. Like he wasn't short by any means. He was only just a little bit shorter than me, and I'm just of average height. So you would have said he was just below average, but not much. But he was like massive, and I mean like muscle massive, not fat at all. Like he was just Frank the Tank. Anyway, finished uni, moved away to Vincenia, worked for 3.5 years, came back to Newcastle, ran into him at the shops. Did not recognize him. It's nuts. I still remember it because he's talking to me, and I'm talking to him because when someone comes up to you and you're like, oh, hey, how you going? I haven't seen you in a while. What have you been doing? And you're like, I'm looking at his face and I'm looking at his eyes and I'm like, I know you. And obviously I know him because he knows me really well, and we're talking like we're old buddies, but I could not pick him. He'd lost like 60 kilos. It's probably an exaggeration, but just looked completely different because he stopped training. He lost all of his muscle mass, and he just looked like your everyday regular dude. Hilarious. Crazy, it still wigs me out. Anyway, moving on. So training must be done regularly enough to maintain adaptations, and that's like once or twice a week. So like a lot of people will like start a training program and their training program is twice a week. Well, guess what? After like a week or two, you're not gonna be making any more adaptations. All you're doing is maintaining what you're doing, okay? Or if you tried to apply progressive overload, but you're only training once or twice a week, you're probably not going to be able to progressively overload because you're not stimulating your body enough to actually make an adaptation. So what you should be doing is training greater than that, so 3 times to 6 times a week to improve adaptations. That's why like professional athletes are called professional athletes, because guess what? They're paid, they make money from their sport. So their everyday job is training. all right? You look at like a professional rugby league player or any type, well, let's go with the examples from the syllabus, a strength athlete or an aerobic athlete, they're not sitting on their butts 5 or 6 days a week and then they just go to the gym 1 time a week, or they go for a run 1 time a week and then all of a sudden they're the gold medal winner. No, like they are busting their guts out every day. Not every day of the week. You do need some rest and recovery because we talked about that to make adaptations, but most days of the week, and sometimes even twice a week, depending on what training cycle they're on, they are trying to improve. And if they don't, they will lose it. So if you do stop training, and another good example, which you've probably all seen at some point, is you get like fit young people who unfortunately for some reason have had an accident and they can't use their legs for like 3 to 6 months because they're in casts or broken or whatever. And then you look at that person's leg or arm or whatever it is after you take the cast off and it's just like diminished. Now, it doesn't mean it's useless. It's just a normal arm or a normal leg. But compared to what they did have, they have lost a lot of their adaptations, which is the point of reversibility. The final thing I wrote on the board there is something called set point theory. So there is set point theory that basically says that everyone's body, according to their genetics and their height, has a set point. So like my set point, for example, in my weight is about 69, 70 kilos. Now I can push hard above that weight, or if I diet hard, I can go below that weight, but my body feels, just generally will feel the most comfortable at around 69, 70 kilos. And that's set point theory, and your body will do things throughout its day and its week to try and maintain that. So that's reversibility.